Okay, we are on Nun Tes Amud base 59b, and the Gemara is talking about the Mishnah had said that the blood, the rest of the blood from the Karbanos are poured on the Yesod HaMizbeach, on the base of the Mizbeach, and from the base of the Mizbeach they go into the stream, which will bring them out to the farmers as fertilizer. However, the farmers would pay for it. The farmers would pay for it, and after it's paid for, it's redeemed from being kodesh, from being holy, and as such, being redeemed, they can use it. But if not for that, there would be me'ilah. Me'ilah is a Torah prohibition of misusing hektish, of taking something that's hektish and misusing it. And typically there would be, for a Torah prohibition of me'ilah, it would be both the repayment of the principal amount, repayment of 25% additional as a penalty, and a korban. And the korban. Now, there's a concept of rabbinic me'ilah, which would not be the same as me'ilah, meaning something that the Torah did not prohibit as me'ilah, as something that you're not allowed to benefit from because of hektish. However, if the Chachamim did prohibit it, and that's what the Gemara says over here, that this would be a rabbinic prohibition of me'ilah. And the pasuk, the Ula said a pasuk that we know this because it says lachem, that the blood is yours, given to you, so it's shalachem yehei, it's yours that you're allowed to benefit from. And Rabbi Shimon says, because it says lachaper, that it's for atonement, but not for me'ilah. It's only for atonement and not a prohibition of usage. Rabbi Yochanan says, because it says who, it is as it is, and it remains as it was from the beginning to the end. And just as after the mitzvah has been done, after you spritz the blood on the mizbeach, and it has completed the mitzvah, and there's no me'ilah, so too beforehand there's no me'ilah, and therefore really any blood that goes out into the water and into the and out to the farmers would be no me'ilah. But rabbinically, the Chachamim obligated the Chachamim obligated a redemption of it, buying it, in order for there not to be me'ilah. Now, the concept that Rabbi Yehuda said was, Rabbi Yochanan said was, that the Torah says who, it is as it is from the beginning to the end. And just like afterwards, there's no me'ilah, so too beforehand, there's no me'ilah. Just like after you've completed the mitzvah, there's no me'ilah, so too beforehand. The Gemara says, how do you know that afterwards there's no me'ilah? Maybe it's the other way around. Just like there's me'ilah before you do the mitzvah, so too there's me'ilah after the mitzvah is complete. The Gemara says, there is no such concept that you've completed the mitzvah and there's me'ilah. And therefore, it can't be that once you've completed the mitzvah of spritzing the blood on the mizbeach and pouring it onto the base, there's still going to be me'ilah. Nasas mitzvah, so the mitzvah's been done. And that's where we left off yesterday. I think Gemara today is going to challenge and say, V'loy, is that really true that there's no such a concept? V'arei trumas hadeshen. What about trumas hadeshen? The Torah has a specific mitzvah. Take every morning, take some of the ash from the mizbeach and put it next to the mizbeach, and it has to be placed there, meaning it's got a mitzvah to be there. You can't take it, that you have to leave it there or put it there. And so this is a special mitzvah of the Samay Eitzah Mizbeach. You're going to put it near the Mizbeach, it has to remain there, and there the mitzvah is done. Now, the original mitzvah is done where it became ash, right? So that was the mitzvah, to burn it on the Mizbeach. It's burnt on the Mizbeach. And even the ash itself that you're taking off and putting it on the side, the mitzvah is done. You put it on the side, and yet it says b'samay is bad. You have to put it there, remain there. It got to be left there. So you see that even though the mitzvah has been done, there's a prohibition of me'ilah, of misuse of taking it from there. Now, if there's actually me'ilah there or not, now Rashi throws in that says, since you're not allowed to take it away, it must be that you're not allowed to benefit. If you're not allowed to benefit, there must be the prohibition of me'ilah, which is one step more than just not allowed to benefit. It's also that there's a carbon. If you benefit from it, there's 125% the penalty repayment. And Tosfos challenges that whether or not there is actually me'ilah. Be that as it may, what we have is the Gemara saying that the idea that nasis mitzvasa is done. You did the mitzvah, and then it's over with. Right? It's like a lulav after Sukkot. The mitzvah is done. There's nothing. It's just a branch at that point. So too over here, and we see it's not so, because the Trumas Hadeshen, even though that you did the mitzvah, you put it next to the mizbeach, the mitzvah is done, and yet it remains a mitzvah, an item of mitzvah. You can't benefit from it, and as Rashi says, there's also me'ilah. So now we go to 60a Samach Amud Aleph. Mishum da'av Trumas Hadeshen big day kahuna shnei kasum abanka. Because actually, there's another place that the Torah says that you have to put it there and leave it there, and essentially, even though the mitzvah is done, you can't benefit from it. And since the Torah said it twice, we have a rule called shnei kasum abanka echad imalam. If the Torah says something once, you could say that that's a binyan out. That's one place the Torah is telling you a concept that applies everywhere. But if the Torah said it twice, that means it's only in those two places, and not everywhere else, because otherwise it wouldn't need to say it a second time. If it's true one place, and from there we learn it for all of the Torah, so then we would be able to learn it for all of Torah, and we wouldn't need the second teaching. So from the fact that, so we said, okay, Trumas Hadeshen teaches us that even though mitzvah is done, it's still prohibited to benefit from. Well, then why did it have to say the same by Big Day Kahuna, by the clothing of the kohen of after Yom Kippur? The 4 white garments after Yom Kippur, where the Torah says, "Ve'inicham sham," and he will place them there, and they remain there. They may not be used again. So the Gemara says, okay, fair enough. That there is such a concept of shnei kasum abanka echad imalam, and we now have 2 psukim that tell us that the mitzvah has been done. You have to leave it there and not use it anymore. Trumas Hadeshen, the ash from the mizbeach every morning, and the Big Day Kahuna, Ve'inicham sham, the 4 white garments of the Kohen Gadol after Yom Kippur, that they have to be set aside. And from there we see, since the Torah has to tell us that those 2, that even though the mitzvah is done, you can't benefit from it, that tells us that other things, even though once the mitzvah is done, you may benefit from it. But that's only true according to the opinion that says that when it says by the clothing of the Kohen Gadol in Yom Kippur, when it says and you will leave them there, that it teaches us that it requires geniza, which is to hide it, to put it away and leave it there. Ella Rabbi Desa. However, according to the opinion of Rabbi Desa, the Amar, big dikuna but what about Rabbi Desa, who says that the garments of the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur, since they're white linen garments, which are essentially what the minor Kohen, the regular Kohen, wears every day, he can use them every day. So the Big Day Kahuna may be used by any Kohen every day, and Ve'inicham sham is simply the idea of Ve'inicham sham is a way to put it away, where to put it, not meaning that you're not allowed to use it. So according to him, what are you going to say? You only have one time the Torah says that once the mitzvah is done, you can't benefit from it, and maybe we should learn from there for everything else. Another Torah said it in another place as well. Trumas Hadeshen, the removal of the ash every day, and Egla Arufa. Egla Arufa is when there's a murdered person found outside of the city. They close the city leaders come and bring in a calf there, and as an atonement for not taking care of the traveler and him in the end being murdered in their environs, in their neighborhood. So Eglah Aruf over there also, it says they now benefit from them anymore. It says Sham, it says it will take them there, Sham Tehei Genizasa. There will be the Geniza, there where you have to leave it, and can't benefit from it after that. So we see that here's again a mitzvah is done, and there's a Torah statement that they can't benefit from it. So from the fact that again the Torah had to say it another time, it is indicative of that it's only in these particular cases and nowhere else. And it's two verses that are teaching the same thing, and two verses teach the same thing. Are not something that we can compare to the rest of the Torah. The Gemara says, okay, we'll accept that, but that too is a machlokes. We see every time that we say Shnei Ksuvim Bankech Malamdim, when there are two psukim teaching the same thing, they don't teach. You can't learn from them. That's one opinion, and the other opinion says no. You need the Torah to say it 3 times for it not to be a general rule. If it only said it twice, then maybe it's still a general rule, and there's a reason why the Torah said it twice. According to the opinion, it says they need 3 times the Torah said this. So they could have just said, well, yeah, maybe they follow the opinion not like Rabbi Dosa that says that the garments of the Kohen Gadol also have to be put away, and they have 3 times, right? Because we've already had 3: the ash on the side of the Mizbeach, the Kohen Gadol's Yom Kippur garments, and the Eglah Arufa by the murdered person outside of the city. However, the Gemara says that there's actually there's a comparison in the pasuk itself. It's Rosh Chodesh, so we started a few minutes ago. We're on 60a, a few lines in. So we have the idea that the mitzvah is done, and once the mitzvah is done, usually there's no prohibition or benefit of something. But over here we have multiple psukim, multiple mitzvahs where the mitzvah has been done, and yet the prohibition is in place. You're not allowed to benefit from it, and why don't we learn from there and say, well, the fact that it's over there the mitzvah is done and you're not allowed to benefit, so too everywhere where the mitzvah is done you're not allowed to benefit from it, and even the blood over here of the carbon that goes into the stream and wants to be used by the farmers for fertilizer, it should be a Torah prohibition of me'ilah. Why did the Mishnah? Why did the Gemara tell us that it's really on a Torah level? There's no prohibition of me'ilah. It's only rabbinic. So the Gemara says actually this is based on the words in the pasuk when it says this mitzvah. By where do we see this concept that even though the mitzvah has been done, you still not allowed to benefit from it? By ash. The Torah says that every morning they take a little bit of ash off of the Mizbeach from the burnt up karbanos from yesterday, and they put it near the Mizbeach, and there it says v'sam mai, and you will put it, right? That is indicative. This has to be put on the side of Mizbeach and be left there. But everything else, once you did the mitzvah, the mitzvah is done, and there's no prohibition of benefit because it's like a lulav after Sukkot. It's just a branch at that point because the mitzvah has been done and it's over. And the same goes by the Eglah Arufa, which says that you're going to leave it over there, this calf that they killed by the murder outside of a city, and the leaders of the city are going to come and atone for not taking care of this traveler. There it says ha'arufa, the Eglah Arufa, this and nothing else. These are specific to these mitzvahs that after the mitzvah is done, you still can't benefit from it. But generally, once the mitzvah is done, you can benefit. So going back to what we started with, the end of 59b, we saw 3 psukim that tell us that by the blood, there's no prohibition of benefit from it. We saw the opinion, the verse that Ula brought on 59b on Nun Testament days that said the pasuk says that the blood is soul and it is for I give it to you lachem, so that means allowed to benefit from it shalachem. And then we saw Rabbi Shimon's pasuk that says the blood is lechaper, specifically as an atonement, and but not me'ilah. You're allowed to benefit from it. And we had a third verse that Rabbi Yochanan said, "Who it is the same from the beginning to the end," to tell you that just as after the mitzvah is done, you're allowed to benefit from it. Even at the beginning, you're allowed to benefit from it, and that's how we got into the conversation of once the mitzvah is done, you're allowed to benefit. But why do we need three phrases in the pasuk about the blood that indicate it's yours? It's sufficient to say one, right? Why do we have 3? Sahani plus a kroi bedam lamali. Why do we need 3 pasukim by blood to tell us that you're allowed to benefit from it? Chad lemuute min noisa. One is actually to tell you that it doesn't have the prohibition of noisa, which is that any leftover carbon the next day, there's a prohibition of benefit eating from it. The blood, obviously, you're not allowed to eat the blood in any case. But if inadvertently he ate some of the blood of the leftover carbon, he's going to be held responsible for eating the blood, and not for eating noisar for the leftovers, because there's no leftover carbon beyond the next day in regards to the blood. And one is, as our conversation is, that you're not held responsible for benefiting from it, where normally if you benefit from a carbon, you have to pay back the principal plus 25%, and you have to bring an atonement, a me'ilah offering. And here you don't have to do that. And one is there to tell you that that also there's no concept of tuma if you benefited from it when you were tameh. Normally, if you eat kachim, if you eat a carbon when you're tameh, there's an additional prohibition. Besides for that, you're not allowed to eat from the carbon. Yeah, or if you're not allowed to eat it, there's also the prohibition. You are tameh. You can't handle, never mind eat the carbon, but by blood that does not apply. However, the prohibition of pigul would apply, which is typically that's what we would indicate. We would think like, oh, so it limited you from tuma, limited you from nosar, and usually together with that goes pigul. The Gemara says no. Actually, pigul I don't even need a pasuk for. Aval mi pigul etzarach lemiute kra. Pigul I don't even need a verse to tell you that it doesn't apply. What is pigul? Pigul is, you remember, we saw this idea that every carbon goes by your intent. So the person bringing the carbon, it's not enough that he has to eat it within the day or the day and a half, depending which carbon it is, but he has to intend at the time that he's bringing the carbon that he's going to eat it within the correct place and within the correct time. And if he doesn't, that invalidates the carbon. If he has the thought of beyond the correct time, that I'm going to eat it tomorrow, I'm going to take care of it tomorrow, I'm going to spritz the blood tomorrow, whatever part, I'm in my mind intent pushing it beyond the correct time, that invalidates the carbon and makes it pigul to the degree that if somebody eats that the punishment is so severe, it's kares, their soul is cut off from its source. That's a very severe punishment for pigul, right? So pigul is a severe prohibition, and yet over here with the blood, I don't even need a pasuk to tell you that pigul doesn't apply to that. Let's our the Tanan as we learned. Kol sheyesh lo matirin bein la'adam bein lemizbeach chayav an adam mishum pigul. Anything that becomes permissible to a human or becomes permissible to the mizbeach, that part of the carbon you're not allowed to eat because of pigul. Meaning, you intend when you shech the carbon to eat it beyond the correct time, and at some point something would allow you to eat that, or would allow you to put it on the Mizbeach. So that consumption, either by you or by the Mizbeach, is allowed by one of the processes. So that is going to become prohibited in Pigul if you had the wrong intent. But the blood, never becomes permissible. In fact, it's what makes everything else permissible. The spritzing of the blood on the Mizbeach is what makes you permitted to eat the carbon, and allows you to put the parts on the Mizbeach that go on the Mizbeach because you spritz the blood on the Mizbeach. So the blood is never permissible because we can't eat blood. The blood is what makes everything else permissible. So only that which becomes permitted, that's where Pigul prohibition applies. The blood never becomes permitted. It is the vehicle to make everything else permitted. So Pigul doesn't apply.
Technical question about Pigul.
Yeah.
I'm under the impression that Pigul is only if you had the wrong thought. If you had no thought at all, you were just going along your merry way.
Correct.
You're good.
Correct.
You had the wrong thought.
Correct. And in fact, we saw in Zvachim that the Gemara suggests that a Kohen just not have any thought, just like whatever this is supposed to be, let it be, right? That generic, I don't know, whatever. Yeah, I'm just doing this because it needs to be done, and whatever needs to be done shall be done. That's the best way to go about it, even though it's not as meaningful as having the correct thoughts. But you really have to know what you're doing to have the correct thought. So sometimes having a generic thought is more valuable. But obviously, the reason all this applies, there are no other mitzvahs like this, where if I had the wrong thought about the mitzvah, it invalidates the mitzvah so severely. And yet, over here it is, because a carbon is not a mitzvah intrinsically. It's not like tzedakah. It's there because of its intent to bring us close to Hashem. And so the wrong intent is completely counter to it. So the proper intent is really important. Nevertheless, if you're likely to make mistakes, then you're better off having a somewhat more generic thought. But you're right, no thought is better than the wrong thought. Now, this was, we come to the next Mishnah. The previous Mishnahs were all telling you all the rules of what's the order of the special Yom Kippur service. The bull, and then the goat, and then the bull, and then the goat, and then the bull, and then the goat, and then you mix it, and you spritz it, you pour it, done, right? This was all the parts done. And the Mishnah is now going to tell us that in all of these, if you got something out of order, it invalidates it. And the rule the Gemara is going to say is that this depends with anything that requires the white garments, which means the special Yom Kippur service, which needs to be done inside the Holy of Holies. And anything, so we're going to have opinions here. Does it mean anything that requires the white garment, if you got out of order, it's going to be invalid? Or no? Even if you needed a white garment, but if it didn't require the white garment specifically for Yom Kippur service, something specific for Yom Kippur, or do we say, no, even white garment specific for Yom Kippur, it's only going to be invalid if you mixed up the order on the inside of the Kodesh HaKodashim, in the Holy of Holies. But what's outside, true, it's specific to Yom Kippur, and it does require the white garments, the special clothing for Yom Kippur, but nevertheless, there, if you missed you got it out of order, it's still going to be okay. 3 opinions, we'll see in the Gemara. But that's the concept of what we're talking about is all of these orders that we just said. What happens if you got something out of order? Will it invalidate or not? Kol Ma'aseh Yom HaKippurim. All of the mitzvahs, the actions done in the Beis HaMikdash for Yom Kippur, Ha'amar ala Seder, which we just taught and said that it's ordered. If you brought one earlier than its fellow, meaning than the other mitzvah that was supposed to be done, it's a non-action. It doesn't count. So you spritz the blood of the goat prior to spritzing the blood of the bull, which it's supposed to be the other way, always first the bull and then the goat. You did it the other way around. You have to go back and spritz the blood of the bull again, the goat again, because the first spritz did not count. Right? So hiktim dam asar l'dam apar. You did the goat blood before the bull blood. You have to go back and spritz the goat blood again because it won't count. And this was relevant a few daf back, if you remember, where the Kohen came out and he was confused. Which basin it has the goat blood in it and which is bull blood. So he said, you know what? Start with one, spritz it, then spritz the other one, and go back and spritz this one. So this way, if this is a bull blood, great. So then you got it in the right order, and then you went back and did it, and it's useless, but no harm done. If this one is the goat, so it's useless at first, but you're going to go second to the bull blood and then back to the goat blood, and then it'll be okay. But what we see is that that's based on this idea that you can't do it in advance. You can't do it out of order. And if you did, you have to go back and redo that one. It's not a valid action. Now what happens? So the Kohen Gadol goes into the Holy of Holies. He's got a bowl of the bull's blood, and he begins spritzing. He does 1 up and 3 down, and he's counting, and he's got 4 more down to go, and it falls out of his, it slips out of his hand, this basin with the bull's blood. I mean, it's heavy, a lot of blood, and it's metal. It slides out, and it spills all over the place. A nice bloody mess in the Kodesh HaKadosh of the Holy of Holies. Be that as it may, right? Before we call the crew in, we have to also know what's the halacha. Does he now have to just continue where he's up to? Does he have to restart and bring a new bull? What does he do? It says, Yavi dam acher. The first opinion in the Mishnah says, yes, he does have to restart. He goes out, he gets a new bull, he has to shecht it and bring the blood of another bull, and he has to start over from the beginning, on the inside. And the same as if it happened outside on the second spritzings, which are in the Beis Hamikdash, in the outer chamber, spritzing towards the curtain, which we saw for the past couple of days. That too, if it spilled at some point, he would have to continue. And also by the golden altar, which we saw that he has to do 4 corners and spritz on the top surface of the Mizbeach 7 times. It spilled prior to completing that. You would have to redo it to get there. Shekulam kapar b'fnei atzma. Each one of them is a separate mitzvah of atonement for a different aspect. And therefore, if he completed one set in the Holy of Holies, he doesn't have to restart the Holy of Holies. That's done. He has to start where he spilled, which is but he has to go back to the beginning. In the first opinion, go back to the beginning of that set. So if it's spilled in the middle of inside the Holy of Holies, he has to go back to the beginning of the Holy of Holies. If it's spilled on the spritzings towards the curtain, he doesn't have to do the Holy of Holies. That's done. He has to go back to the beginning of the 7 of the bull and 7 of the goat and towards the curtain. He completed that. He's up to the Mizbeach, the golden altar, and it's spilled there. He only has to go back to that because each one's its own separate set of atonement. However, Rabbi Lezer and Shimon and Shimon say he actually doesn't have to go back to the beginning of that set. It's valid for him to just go to up to where he's up to. So if he had done 1 up and he's up to number 4 down, and that's where it spills, so he can go back to number 4 down. He doesn't have to go back to the beginning. Tanarma. So the Brisa taught Kamasi Mikapurim Ha'amor Allah Seder. All of the teachings in Kippur that we said in this order. If he did 1 prior to the next one that's supposed to be done, the previous one that's supposed to be done, he skipped 1 and went ahead, then it doesn't count. He has to redo that. And Rabbi Yehuda says, but there's a limit. Only the items that have to be done on Yom Kippur in the white garments, inside the Holy of Holies. Aval dvar manasim bebigdei lava mibachutz. But anything that's done in the white garments, even though they're done in the white special Yom Kippur garments, since they're not done in the Holy of Holies, they're done outside, either the spritzings on the the curtain on the outside, or on the mizbeach on the outside, or the even prior to the whole set of that, where we said that he has to go and lean on the bull and say the vidui, express his sins. Then he has to go and do the gurul, do the lottery, and then he has to go back and express the sins of the kahanim on the bull, and then he has to shech the bull. Those steps also can be out of order because they're not done in the Holy of Holies, they're done outside. If he skipped the order over there, what he did works. However, Rabbi Nechemia says a different caveat. No, regardless, if it needs the white garments, whether it's done inside or whether it's done outside, it's going to have to be in the correct order. However, but even the things that are special to Yom Kippur, but if they're done in the golden garments, which are the rams that he brings special on Yom Kippur for himself, to atone for himself and to atone for the community, and if he did that prior to taking out the hands that are in the Holy of Holies, which also have to be going in, has to be done with white, but the rams are done in gold. If he did that out of order, Masha Asa, that those rams are going to be valid. So Rabbi Yochanan said, so we have the three opinions here. We have anything that's Yom Kippur. That's the simple reading of our Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda says no, only that which requires white garments and is done inside the Holy of Holies. And Rabbi Nechemia says no, only that which requires white garments, whether inside or outside. But if it's special for Yom Kippur, but you can do it in the gold garments, won't become invalid if you did it out of order. And Rabbi Yochanan says, Shneim Mikra Echad, so they're both looking at the same verse, because the Torah says at the end of going through the Yom Kippur service, says, V'haisa zeis lachem, and it shall be this to you, l'chukas olam, for an everlasting statute. We know as a general rule in the Torah, whatever for a korban, anything that the Torah says once, it means that's the way to do it. But if you did it differently, it's going to be valid. Two, if the Torah repeats it, then if you didn't do it in the right order, or you did it in the right way, it's going to be invalid. Unless if the Torah says it only once, but then the Torah says chukah, it's a statute, it's a chok, then it must be done the way it said. Now it says this shall be for you as a chok. Now this is limiting. What's it limiting to? And it says once a year. That on the once a year matter, that which is the Yom Kippur stuff, is a statute. And now we turn to 60b, Samacham and Beis. Rabbi Yehuda is of the opinion, he says, what's once a year? Bringing a bull? No. Bringing a goat? No. Bringing a ram? No. That's not once a year. You know what's once a year? Once a year is going inside the Holy of Holies. Only that which requires pnim, going into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, that's once a year. And if you didn't do it right, in the right order, it's going to be invalid. Rabbi Nechemia says, says, no, it's not talking about the place that you're doing the atonement once a year. It's the form of atonement, the thing you're atoning for once a year, which is the general sins of Kollel Yisrael. That's once a year. So anything that requires anything that's Yom Kippur, whether inside or outside, the communal atonement once a year, it needs the order, and if you didn't do it that way, it's invalid. So Gemara says, well, according to Yehuda, what you're saying is, it's as if it says the place that you go once a year, but it doesn't say the place. It says Achaz Bashana once a year. Rabbi Nechemia is correct that it means the atonement of once a year. What gave you the notion that it means the place once a year. It doesn't say anything about a place. It says, and this shall be your statute once a year. It can be Rabbi Chemi is right. It doesn't say anything about the place. So you're right. That's not the reasoning of Rabbi Yehuda. Rather, ksiv zeis, ksiv achas. It says two limits. It says this shall be your statute. So that's limiting. And it says achas. One thing's a statute. So they both are limiting. One says, even if it needs the white garments, if it's outside of the Holy of Holies, so only this. So this tells you only if it's inside the Holy of the Holies, not outside. And one tells you achas, that which you do once a year, meaning it needs white garments. If you did it with the golden garments, even if it's a one-time a year service, it's not going to be a part of this statute, meaning that it's invalid if you didn't do it right. Rabbi Nechemia says, no, that's coming for something else. He agrees. He says if it requires golden garments, that's not special for Yom Kippur, even though it's particularly Yom Kippur service, like the rams, but nevertheless, it's you're doing it in the golden garments, it's not special garments. So this refers to the white garments, whether inside or outside. But the second limit of achas is to tell you that it has to be that which is the mitzvah itself and not the leftovers. Meaning, the leftover dam, we said the blood has to be spritzed on has to be poured down on the base of the altar. So that's already just what you do with the leftovers. It's not part of the mitzvah itself. And anything that was supposed to come after that, if you did it beforehand, it's not going to make a difference because the leftover pouring on, that's not a part of the mitzvah. That's really the leftovers of mitzvah. The lemakvin, so that's not going to invalidate if it was done out of order. Rabbi Yehuda says, I don't care whether it's leftovers or not. If you tell me anything in the white garments have to be in order, so even the leftovers pouring it on the base has to be in order. And if you tell me that it doesn't matter, and it's not going to matter whether it's leftovers, so this too shouldn't matter. Because the Tanya, as we learned, the pasuk says, "V'chila," and he will complete, he will be done. Mikaper es hakodesh, from the atoning or the spritzing, the atoning for the Beis Hamikdash. Im kiper kilo. If the way they read this is, it says, and he will complete from the atonement. If he atoned it, he did the whole thing, then he's complete. Then the mitzvah is done. So to over here, he spritzed, which means he completed he atoned. So once he's atoned, kila is completed it. Vim loy kiper. But if he didn't spritz, meaning he didn't bring the atonement, loy kila is not done to Rabbi Akiva. That's what Rabbi Akiva says. Another version says what Rabbi Yehuda says. Amalei Rabbi Yehuda. So Rabbi Yehuda said, how do you know to read this? Maybe it's the other way around. Why don't we say that we say it this way? Im kila kaper. If you completed it, meaning you did the entire thing, including the leftovers, then kaper, then you did an atonement. Vim loy kila. And if you didn't complete it, loy kaper, you did not atone. Shem chiser achas min hamatanes lo yasav l'kum. Meaning, if you're missing even one aspect over here, it's going to not be valid. Meaning, you did 3 and not 4 of the spritzes. You did 6, not 7. You're missing even one thing. It's not going to be valid. But the Gemara says, well, what's the distinction according to Rabbi Yochanan? That would also be true, because Rabbi Yochanan also said, "Im kiper," if you spritz, meaning you completed it, then you're done. So what difference does it make? So Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Shua Levi. So Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Shua Levi, they both had an explanation of what the distinction would be. Chad Omar once said, actually, halachically, there's no ramifications. They're actually the same meaning. Just how to read the verse. Does it mean atone, complete it, and then you'll atone? Or does it mean complete, and then complete, and then you'll atone? Or atone, and then you're done, you're completed. So which way to read the verse? And so Mashma is Darshan Gaminayu. One just says, what's the simple reading of the verse? And one says, no, actually there's a halachic ramification, a halachic meaning, and that is Shirayim Ma'akvi Yekabinayu. If you that do the leftovers manner and invalidate if you don't do it in the right order. Because it says atone, which we interpret as spritz, right? Because that we see that the spritzing of the blood is the atonement. So atone, and then you're done. The leftovers is going to be a mitzvah, but not invalidate. So whereas if you read it the other way around, complete, and then you're atoned, complete means you will even have to spritz the leftovers. Now the Gemara says, and did Rabbi Yochanan really say that according to Rabbi Nechemia, the leftovers that's in the bowl that have to be poured on the base of them is going to be invalid? It will invalidate if you if it's not done. And Rabbi Yochanan said, Tana Rabbi Nechemia, we have a teaching from Rabbi Nechemia that the leftovers will invalidate, meaning if you don't pour it on the base, it's going to be invalid because you missed one step. How can you tell me that according to Rabbi Yochanan, you don't require the leftovers because he says atone and then you're complete? No, he says that it's not enough to just spritz. You have to pour the leftovers out as well. Kasha, indeed, that is a question. We'll leave it at this, and tomorrow we'll go through some of the rest of the things that are done with the white garments, but not really a part of the atonement process. Are they invalid if they're done out of order or not? We saw some of this in regards to the lottery, and we're going to see the same in the chafina, in the taking of the ash into his palms. Tomorrow also is Rosh Chodesh, so we'll be at 6 a.m.